Jags free agent are you more interested in the Titans going after? Wide receiver Calvin Ridley, who's put up a ton of incredible stats in his last 2 years, sandwiched his gambling suspension year, or Darious Williams, a cornerback who had 4 picks last year for Jacksonville, who was a salary cap casualty after the Jags tagged Josh Allen yesterday. Which Jags free agent is the better fit for the Titans? Calvin Ridley or Darious Williams? What's the chat saying today?
Kenneth is going to start us off on Facebook. He says Ridley for $16 million a year. He's all for it.
Yeah, AJ was also great for $16 million a year too, right? Right, Kenneth?
Ridley from IR Hoshi. Let's see. It's not about the right. It's about the right fit. If it's not about the right name, Rodney says. Calvin Ridley's name obviously carries more weight. Stephen King passes on both. Curtis C says it's Darious Williams. Kenneth says bring in Williams, better than what we have now, and he's not wrong about that. Ross Biggie says he likes both, but he'll take Williams if he's got to pick one. Jeffrey says it's obviously Ridley. Is both an option from Derek?
Sure.
I doubt both is an option, but
why not?
You know what?
Why not?
You know what? If that's one way to really weaken the Jaguars while also bettering your own roster.
Well, look, the Jags are kind of desperate. The Jags might still try to bring back Calvin Ridley, but he's the number one guy. Mike Evans back with Tampa.
It's important to note that if the Jaguars do re-sign Calvin Ridley, they'd have to give up, what is that, a second-round pick? That was in the contract when they added Calvin Ridley from Atlanta. So Deshaun Watson says it's Ridley. Top Tier says it's Williams.
Deshaun Watson watching the show?
Deshaun Washington. Let's see. Ridley on a 2-year deal. Ridley hands down from Jaron. Ashley says it's Williams. Demetrius says it's Ridley. Terrence says it's Ridley. Both, but I'm going to take Ridley for the game, says Darius. Williams from Willie. Both from Corey. Ridley from Scott. Ridley from Jody. Ridley is the most popular answer right now. Ridley from American Toff. Both, but Ridley, if I can only choose one from Brock. Ridley from Houston. And like I said, Williams from Patrick Bird. Williams from Titans Kyle. All right, let's dive into this. I think it's a great question because there's upside to both players. However, both players are on the wrong side of 30 years old. And that's something that I think is important to keep an eye on. So when you talk about adding Calvin Ridley, it's probably going to take around $17, $18 million a year to do so. And I'm fine with spending the money.
Do you want to know what our projection is?
Go ahead and lay it on me.
3 years, $60 million. So 20 per. Year one cap hit of 7 is what we've got on A2ZSports.com in our top 105 contract projections article. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this here in the chat for you guys. But he is the 14th highest guy on our list. Now, our list includes the ones that have been franchise tagged. It also includes Mike Evans. So continue that. But $20 million per year is the number. And how much has that gone up? Because Evans re-signed for 26 per. And then you've got 2 franchise tag receivers of T. Higgins and Michael Pittman Jr. at 21.8 on the franchise tag.
Yeah, so Calvin Ridley's 29. Darious Williams, I believe, is going to be 31 by the time the league year starts. And Calvin Ridley is coming off a big-time year. You mentioned 1,000 yards, and he tore up the Titans a couple occasions last season, especially when Christian Kirk was unavailable late in the year. Calvin Ridley had that big game. So the Titans know just what Calvin Ridley's capable of doing. And look, last year it was a year off of a year-long suspension from gambling, and he still put up 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. So there's no doubt that Calvin Ridley can still get it done at an elite level. Darious Williams, on the other hand, is 31, coming off his best year. Are you paying top dollar for a guy who really hasn't done much in the NFL? He's been like a starter for four straight seasons, but he's bounced around a lot. Hasn't really been a Pro Bowl caliber player. So my answer to this question is Calvin Ridley. It takes a weapon away from Trevor Lawrence, who I believe, Duval County starting to raise a few questions about him after this last year. You add Calvin Ridley to this team. You draft a guy like Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, and you've got your big 3 right there. I think that Calvin Ridley makes the most sense between the 2 players, Darious Williams and Ridley. You weaken the Jags on offense. You get better. You surround Will Levis with another veteran option who's a little bit younger than D-Hop and has much less tread on his tires after taking a year off because he was forced to take a year off. But I just think that Ridley aligns with Callahan's vision more so than Darious Williams does. And because he's a better fit there, and because he's an established receiver in this league, and he proved that he can get back to that level after a year off, I think that Ridley's your answer at wide receiver. You're able to spend some money in a position of need while also going young in the draft at a position of need. And then you've got a big three right there. And maybe it only lasts for a year because D-Hop's only got a year left. But you've got a replacement option for when D-Hop leaves. You've got Ridley to fall back on. And then you've got your wide receiver that you've drafted to become the face of the franchise down the road. So you set yourself up for the future, add a weapon to Will Levis, make Callahan's life easier on offense. I think he checks more boxes than Darious Williams would at cornerback at 31. So for that reason, I'm in on Ridley and out on Darious Williams. But I do understand that Williams would be an upgrade at cornerback as well. So I don't fault the chat for those who sided with Williams in this discussion. But when you give me both of those players, I'm taking Ridley all day, every day, and twice on Sunday.
All right, so Bucks Burner says, I'm switching my answer. I didn't know Williams was 31. Give me Ridley. Well, Calvin Ridley's 30. Yeah, well, yeah, but he will be
30.
He will be 30. And then because Williams is 30 and will be 31.
Yeah.
And so they're both on that side. Like Calvin Ridley was like a 20-year-old freshman at Alabama.
And that's the thing.
Do you remember that? Did you remember that? He was like, maybe he was like 21. It was
I don't know what happened in high school.
Both him, you remember Riley Ridley, his brother at Georgia? For whatever reason, both those dudes were like 20 or 21-year-old freshmen in college. I don't know what their parents did, but it kind of screwed them over in the long term. Like maybe they were better in Pop Warner because they were held back a little bit or something, but it really screwed him over because this guy's hitting free agency at going into 30 years old when he's only played like 4 years or 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years, and he's 29 years old. So while that is weird, does it make
pre-COVID? This isn't like a COVID drafted guy. He was like 21 as a freshman at Bama.
But when you're looking at every 29-year-old, 30-year-old wide receiver, they've all got mileage. Calvin Ridley, he's done a lot of great things in the league, but he doesn't come with that mileage. He's probably not, biologically 30, with his body, his knees, and his, he's had 2 1,000-yard seasons, one 1,300-yard season in Atlanta, but he's not an 8-9 year vet like most of these players are when they become a free agent at 29 years old. He's only got 5 years of experience under his belt. So I think that, maybe his prime gets extended a little bit.